Hey, what's up? So I just got off, I almost said the phone. We didn't talk because I tried to call him, but he's at work. But I just had a conversation with my friend through texting, and he wrote me this morning, and he was saying that New York is now debating religious exemptions for vaccines. So I was just like, I mean, no. I appreciate it, and I know, I'm just at the point, but I'm making this video because it got me thinking. I'm just at the point. I've been trying to wake people up about a lot of stuff for at least, it's almost been a decade, since about 2010, 2011. So I'm at the point where I feel like what's going on right now is we're at the tipping point. We're at the tipping point of people that want to know the truth, and people that, people are waking up in one direction, and some people are going back to sleep because they're scared, or, they don't really believe that, that much evil is possible. So I'm just at the point where I've done what I can do. I'm doing what I can do. And I mean, that's all I can do. I can't wake up people that don't want to be woken up. I'm not, wasting my time anymore debating people or trying to talk to people that don't want to listen, because it doesn't matter how much evidence you put in front of somebody that doesn't want to wake up, how much common sense you think you're using. If they have it in their mind that they're not open, then it's not worth their time, and just move on to somebody else. There's some people that just want to drown. There's some people, you throw them a life raft or what do you call this, a lifesaver, and they'll just like not see it and just be swimming. Or other people, you throw them a lifesaver and they'll take it. So you got to really focus on those people. And that's what my friend was talking about. He was just basically saying that, like, I got to do something for myself, because I've been at this for a while and it's just getting tiring. And I think, he was a bit pessimistic. I wanted to talk to him, to hear his voice, because you can get more of a feel by listening to somebody. But he seems like he was just a bit pessimistic, and I'm not pessimistic. The culling has begun, y'all. The culling has begun. So either you're going to be woke or you're not. And those people that are just willingly going to walk into, things like, even though, they're debating free, religious exemptions for vaccines, people that are just going to walk into it and not really think, then, it's sad. They're going to get hurt. Those are people that are going to get hurt. And it's frustrating, because this is what I've been trying to prevent. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. I don't want to see anybody get autoimmune diseases or cancer or autism or anything from these damn vaccines. But I can only do so much. I had to even go through a period where I was just devastated, because, I was trying to tell a lot of my friends about what was going on. And, some of them just wrote me off and just like exiled me, and they just thought I was crazy. And some listened, but I had to be like, I had to get over myself too. I was like, well, their children come before me, so I have to realize that the conditioning is so strong, it runs so deep, especially with vaccines. I have a friend right now who's having trouble with one of her kids, because her child is like challenging her on all this vaccine information. And I was talking with her about it the other day, and it runs very deep, like from the time we are in Sesame Street, okay? Usually, okay, now people are getting vaccinated on the first day of birth with the Hep B shot, which you don't even need unless you plan on, your baby plans on being a drug addicted prostitute. But, you have Sesame Street, you have all these cartoons that are saying get vaccinated. And now the thing is, I've noticed all these fake news nerds that are on YouTube and all these alternative media. So whether they make a video specifically about vaccines, they'll make a really snide comment, remark, how stupid anti-vaxxers are. And I know, especially, some of my friends, this is the only friend's child that has had an issue with this, or she's had an issue with too. I've had a few other parents who I know whose children have just like been resistant and not really, you know, just basically they'll, you know, they're very conditioned. They think they're intelligent, and they are intelligent. I'm not saying they're not, but they're conditioned by these, you know, fake news nerds, like, you know, like the science, like, what's his name, Hank, the Sci guy, or not Bill Nye, but there's another guy who's younger and he has glasses, and I saw one of his videos, and he's talking about, like, you know, parents. He was like, yeah, there was a study saying that, you know, parents that think about the information are 8 times less likely to vaccinate. So, why don't you just not think about it and do it? I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? Really? So if they're likely to think about it, and they choose not to vaccinate, why is that? 8 times? 8 times less likely? That's a lot. That's a lot. But then he goes in the video and he talks about, like, how, you know, a lot of these parents that are saying that vaccines cause their child's autism has to do with confirmation bias. I'm like, this is such bullshit. It's such bullshit. And it's really what they're doing. They're projecting what is onto us, exactly what they're doing, right? Because, you know, they're saying that these things are safe and effective. There are no long-term studies. There's not a vaccinated versus unvaccinated study. There's not a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. There are other doctors that they're just, and scientists that they're just pretending that don't exist, and a lot of them are world-renowned, and they do great research in other areas and are world-renowned for other work that they've done, but they're challenging the safety and efficacy of vaccines, and they're just pretending that they don't exist, right? They're just pretending that doctors and scientists don't have children. Like, they can't be parents. It's like either a doctor or scientist, and then you're not, and then you're a parent. Like, I know the founder of Vax Truth, Marcella Piper Terry, she's a scientist and a parent. Oh, go figure. You never know, right? How can you be a scientist and a parent at the same time? I guess it's possible, right? So, you know, and that parents can't weigh the options, you know, that we're too stupid, or parents, I'm not a parent, but parents are too stupid to, like, you know, look at both sides and figure stuff out. You know, why don't they want you to hear the other side? Why are they shunning and just, you know, pushing all these other doctors, you know, aside that are making sense about why they're not safe and effective, and why, you know, why they just think that we listen to Andrew Wakefield and Jenny McCarthy and, like, Alex Jones, and we made up our mind, and that's it, right? We don't have a brain, because that's what they do. They repeat and repeat and repeat. They repeat the sound bites. Vaccine saves lives. Vaccinate your children. You're putting us all in danger. You know, these taglines that they always have that they just you don't really think about. And I was talking to somebody the other day. He was like, oh, well, you know, people used to, you know, die at childbirth. And I was like, okay, first of all, think about this, because I know you're a smart guy. Where are you getting this information? Really? Okay, is there any statistics to back up how many people died during childbirth? Oh, wait, by the way, vaccines did not stop that, okay? So you have to look at things like, first of all, these are statistics in the Western world. You know, when you hear stuff like people died at childbirth, not in like other countries, like beside, I'm just gonna say Europe and America. Europe's not a country, but it's a continent, right? Where they kept written information about all this, right? Where like other countries outside of that, they don't really have a lot of statistics on who died, how many people died, what age. But I do know that even back then, when people were dying at childbirth, there were also a lot of people that lived well into their hundreds, okay? So do we have any, I mean, you hear these things, but you don't really have any, like, data statistically to back it up, except you would talk about people dying in childbirth, and then you have somebody like Semmelweis who comes along, who tells doctors to do what? Oh, wash their hands. Wash your hands, right? When they start washing their hands, the number of women dying in childbirth dramatically reduced. And at the time, he was driven into insanity because he was telling doctors to wash their fucking hands when they came home, or they came from, like, the morgue, and then they would go do childbirth, and they didn't believe in washing their hands. They were just like, that's ridiculous. We don't need to wash our hands. And, you know, and then when he brought this theory up, like, yeah, you need to wash your hands. This is why they're getting infections and getting sick. It's called, like, pronominal fever or something. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But, you know, they were resistant, just like it was kind of like the time now that people are challenging vaccines. They're saying that, oh, that's ridiculous. Vaccine saves lives. The doctor's like, that's ridiculous. We don't have to wash our hands. right? And he was a doctor, but even, then, because they had to change their paradigm, they weren't ready for something as simple as wash your hands, okay? And, they were saying he was a kook and a quack, and, exiled him, and it was a terrible situation. Think about all the women that died, in childbirth because these flipping doctors with their big ass egos didn't believe in washing their hands. Okay? So the thing is, people have to have a paradigm shift. And this whole thing that's going on with them trying to ban exemptions for vaccines, I think there are enough people now that are going to be woke. I think there are enough people now that are waking up to the fact that they have to force these things on us. When are good ideas ever forced on anybody, right? Why are people resisting, and why are people? The CDC reported, we have a video on our wall from a few months ago when they're talking about the CDC's report has reported that fewer and fewer people are getting vaccines, right? They put anti-vaxxers on the vaccine hesitancy list. There's a lot of money being made in keeping people sick, keeping people dependent on medicine. We did a podcast when we first started with a lady named Gwen Olson. She was one of the first pharmaceutical whistleblowers to come out. And now it's Brandy Vaughn. There's another guy named Virapin, and I can't think of, but she was one of the first ones to come out. And she was saying, just like in a business meeting when you go and you're like, okay, these are our projected goals and we want to reach this by this and this. She said she would go to meetings and they would say that they wanted at least everyone addicted or dependent on 2 prescriptions, at least 2 prescriptions. Everybody on the planet, okay? 2 prescriptions, okay? Now, vaccines are linked to a multitude of autoimmune disorders. And back in the day, when you hear about these plagues and, people that are staunchly pro-vax, they're like, it's like, you better get vaccinated or you're going to bring on the plagues back. Well, first of all, plagues, bacteria, mice carried bacteria over by Europe. You know why? Because people would, they had horses, right? They didn't have cars. So horses are crap in the street. When they take a dump or piss, they just throw it out the window. They didn't have sewage, okay? They didn't have incineration. They would, get chicken and eat it, and then they just throw the bones out on the street. And the bones are not going back into the ground. There are no vultures to eat. Because if you're in the wild, the ecosystem would take care of all of that because bones would seep in back into the soil, and you have other bacteria that are in the forest that would, eat it, and you have other insects that would eat it and gnaw it and pick away at it. And when you're living in a city with concrete streets, with no sewage system, that doesn't have an incinerator, that has trash just piling up, people didn't bathe. People bathe in the same water that they ate in, and they made dinner with, and they used the restroom in. So it's gonna be, and then people lived in tighter spaces. It's gonna be a recipe for infestation and rats and diseases and all of that stuff. It's just common sense if you understand hygiene and how that works. Now, once hygiene started getting implemented, like sewage systems and incineration, people had a little bit more room and they started washing their hands, then all of these microbial diseases disappeared. There was no vaccine for cholera or typhoid. There was no vaccine they tried a scarlet fever vaccine, but that it was so bad, people were instantly apparently getting hurt. So they didn't what do they call it? They didn't they didn't implement it on a large scale. But all these vaccines, all these diseases that people were dying of when they talk about the plague, had to do with hygiene or poor nutrition. Measles, people were dying getting by because a lot of bad nutrition. Vitamin A, scurvy. There was no vaccine for scurvy, but they knew that lack of vitamin C, you don't have scurvy. Your body is an amazing machine. If you have the right nutrients, you thrive. If you don't, if you've ever seen pictures of people with scurvy, they look like zombies because, their skin is falling off, their teeth are falling, your hair falls out, so you don't get certain nutrients, you fall apart because our bodies are made to thrive on certain types of nutrients and certain, vitamins and minerals. And it's science. It's called biochemistry, okay? So then now you have these vaccines. So since we figured all this out, since the vaccines have been implemented in other modern technology, I would say mostly vaccines, because I really believe from my research that vaccines are a trigger, right? So you have to trigger your immune system in order to weaken it, and then other factors like GMOs and EMFs and all these other environmental factors make your immune system weaker. So you have vaccines. It's been linked to cancer, asthma, allergies, Alzheimer's, autism, and all it is, and arthritis, right? And if you think about it, what happens, especially with the adjuvants in the vaccine, like aluminum is put in vaccines, and they use other adjuvants too, but I'm giving aluminum as an example, right? An adjuvant is the component of vaccine. An adjuvant speeds up your immune system to make you produce titers faster, right? So they have the antigen, which is whatever virus you vaccinate for. They have the titers to make you, to speed up, the adjuvant to speed things up, right? There are other components in vaccines that they do different things, but I'm just going to focus on those two right now. So the adjuvants speed up the titers, and it's aluminum, and aluminum is meant to stay in your body. It has to stay in your body in order for you to produce titers. So, and that's how they measure your titer count, is how they measure if you're immune to a disease or not. So the aluminum stays around. You don't pass it. Like, you eat certain things, you have a bowel movement, you urinate, you sweat, you get that stuff out of your body, but you don't with the aluminum, and it stays in your system, and it also passes the blood-brain barrier. So macrophages can gobble up aluminum and take it up to the brain, and that's where you can get brain information, which causes autism. Depending on where it is in your body, it's still, you can get hypersensitive to some of the components. It gives you allergies. It gives you asthma, because asthma is inflammation of the bronchial tubes. Arthritis is inflammation of the joints. So all of these are autoimmune. I'm just naming a few, right? But if you look up autoimmune diseases, they're usually inflammation of some part of, or some organ in your body. And vaccines, by the mechanism, create inflammation. Therefore, you create a lot of autoimmune diseases in your body. Now, when these autoimmune diseases are created, which, they're chronic conditions, right? So you're not dying right away, but then you become dependent on medicine to keep you thriving the best way you can, or to keep you alive, right? I have asthma. I have to have an inhaler with me in order, in case I have an attack, right? Because my bronchial tubes become inflamed. I have to have a steroid inhaler to decrease the inflammation, because that's what steroids do. They dramatically, rapidly decrease inflammation. But then that leads to other host of complications in your body, because steroids are bad. So then I have the steroid inhaler, and then I use that. But then the steroids that I'm using help, mess with my thyroid, right? So now I have to get medicine for my thyroid to regulate my thyroid hormones. Then I take that medicine, and that medicine does something else. So then you have a chain effect of reactions that you are dependent on different medications for. I hope that makes sense, right? It's like you take one medicine, then that has a side effect. You take one medicine, then that has a side effect. So it's very like, you see those commercials where they advertise certain drugs, and then they have 1,000 side effects that the medication causes. You're like, geez, I just rather have allergies, because I don't want rectal bleeding, right? It's crazy. So or even the sometimes the medication causes the exact same symptom that they're supposed to be against. So a side effect of antidepressants is depression. Right? I was reading in an epileptic journal that seizure medication actually causes seizures. SSRI, if you get off of SSRIs rapidly, you can get seizures, and so some of these drugs you can't even stop. You're dependent on them. So, and because I have a lot of internal inflammation in my body from asthma and other dysmenorrhea, and other, my joints would get inflamed and all this stuff, I've rapidly changed my diet. and exercise, and that's made a world of difference. And I'm damn near off my medication, and I've reversed it, a lot of it, I would say. Now, a lot of people will say that's impossible. I'm telling you it's possible. I know a lot of people that have been able to become healthy through diet, but the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want you to have that power. They don't want you to have the power to heal yourself. They want you to be dependent on them like a slave. We're slaves. They want us to be slaves. Get it? Are you getting it now? Are you getting it? Okay. So, with that said, people are living actually not as long as they could be now because of all the autoimmune disorders, right? So there was a period of time too, they figured out the microbial diseases, and those can be cured by sanitation and balancing the ecosystem in the environment, right? But now, people aren't dying of microbial diseases anymore. They're dying of autoimmune diseases or having complications from that, right? So this is why, I think a big reason too why this is just such a huge issue, and not why they're trying to force it on people, because not only, you know, a population that's sick is easy to control because they physically don't have the strength to fight back, but mentally, right? If you're sick, you mentally, you know, it's hard for you to think, it's hard for you to process information, right? People can be compromised if they think that somebody they love has a life-threatening illness, and the only cure is like a treatment that costs like hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of dollars. They might kill somebody or pop somebody off. You know, you think about all these people that are supposedly being you know, compromised through pedophile rings, but another way to compromise people is through illness, right? So it's a huge system of control that the globalists want worldwide and have worldwide, and they're losing it. And one of those ways, I believe strongly, is through vaccinating people, because once you get vaccinated, you have those chemicals in your body. It's really hard to get them out, and it's really hard to reverse the process. And I'm gonna have somebody on this month or next month to talk about our natural immune system and how that works and how to fortify that, so people can get an idea. Because I still think that we've just been so inundated with this information, or this propaganda, I should say, not information, but that it's really hard to wrap your head around the fact that we could thrive without vaccines and all this medication that they're trying to keep us dependent on so they can enslave us. All right. Anyway, that's my rant today, y'all. Oh shit. Can I make this? Come on. You know, you're trying to get into a gate. No, it's gonna. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to crush my car. All right. Peace and love. Get back. Mwah.